Hey, I'm Andy. Welcome to the Church Basement. So I am a big believer in habits and routines, mostly because when I stick to my daily routine, I tend to get more of the things done that I want to get done, and I handle life better. In my recent video, 4 Things Everyone Needs to Connect to, I outlined how connecting to self, others, truth and reality, and God help us stay connected and help us deal with life in good, wise, and healthy ways. If you haven't watched that video, go check it out. It's linked below. It's short and it provides a good framework for what connection is and why it matters. This video is meant to show how I've taken the idea of connection and made it a part of what I do on a daily basis. A lot of these things aren't going to be new or mind-blowing to many of you, and that's okay. I'm just trying to show how some of these activities that we do help us connect to the things we need to connect to. Instead of going through each area of connection and what I do, I want to just walk through my day, morning to night, and show you what I do and how it relates to connection. All right, first, my morning routine. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is get a cup of coffee. Then I start my morning routine. My morning routine, it's pretty much the same every single morning. Morning is not the time to figure out and plan and decide, well, what am I going to read? What am I going to do today? That is not the time to figure it out. You'll do it consistently if you remove all those barriers. So that's what I've done. First thing I do is pray. I like to use a couple well-known prayers, which are sometimes called set prayers. For me, I like using the Lord's Prayer and then the Serenity Prayer. Then I say a couple of short prayers that I came up with. One for my morning routine. God, open up my heart and mind to what you have to say to me this morning. And then one for my day. Help me be faithful, loving, patient, and present with those around me, and help me do your will, not mine. And if not my will, help me be okay, and help me know I am okay. This starts my day by connecting to God and making him my first priority. Typically, when I wake up, my mind is everywhere. So this helps me kind of focus it and narrow it and connect to God and get me started down the right path, which helps me a lot. Then I read a devotional, and this is meant to get me thinking about what's true. So I'm connecting to truth here. I've read a lot of devotionals over the years. They can be hit or miss, and then some are great. I have found that shorter, simple devos about Jesus and the Gospels is exactly what I need first thing in the morning. Some of my favorites are linked in the description. Then I read a little bit of recovery material. This could typically be a page or two from any of the different 12-step group books. Each group tends to have its own book, and I just read from any of them. Or I'll read from a book on addiction, recovery, codependency that I've already read but I found helpful. I purposely read from all of the different 12-step group books, even books that aren't my addiction, because they each hit a little different. While each addiction and compulsion is unique, all of the stories and the lessons and the wisdom in these books speaks on a deep level about the human condition, and I can relate to that. Here, I'm trying to connect to reality. This is what life looks like for people struggling with addiction and codependency. This is what it looks like to try to deal with it on your own, apart from the help of God and others. This is what hope looks like when you rely on God and others. And all these stories remind me that I'm not alone on my journey. Then I read from my Bible, I journal, and I pray. I adopted this method of reading, journaling, and praying, and I've been using it for about 6-7 years, and it's simple, it connects me to truth, and that is what I'm after in the morning. I call it Lazy Lectio. It's based on Lectio Divina, which I'm probably saying wrong, but that means holy reading or spiritual reading, and I've basically taken this method and I've simplified it. So first I read a section of scripture. It could be a verse, it could be a paragraph, it could be a story. Whatever makes sense or whatever is standing out to me. I'll read it a couple times, I'll review some study Bible notes if I need a little more context on what it's talking about, and then I try to zero in on what is the truth that I need to connect to in this text. I'll use this method to read through the New Testament, Psalms, Proverbs, and it takes me about 2.5 years to cover all of it. There's no specific order to which books I read when, I just make sure to get all of them. And I do read the Old Testament, but I just do it in a different way, and it's not part of my morning or my daily routine. So I read a piece of scripture and then I journal. I typically write out my understanding of what's going on in the text, what's stirring up inside me, what I'm thinking about, where I see myself following this truth, where I don't see myself following this truth, maybe the lies that I tend to believe instead of the truth. And I think about the things that I ought to be doing and the things I need to remember. This is where I connect to myself and the truth I just connected to at the same time. Then I journal out my prayer based on everything that I've done so far. It could be anything that's stuck out from the morning so far, things that I'm thinking about, the day ahead. There's typically elements of confession and praise and thanksgiving, and I ask Him for help to get through the day, to remember to do the things that I think I need to do, to remember the truth that I need to connect to. Also, this tends to be the place where I pray for others. I don't know why, but it just helps me a lot when I write someone's name down and then jot down how I can pray for them. So this tends to be the time when I do that. Sometimes I will then sit in silence and actually set a timer and try to just pay attention and listen to what God might be saying in that moment. This is a newer addition to my morning routine, and I don't always stick with it, and it's very difficult. Quieting my mind takes a lot of discipline, and I'm still learning, and I'm not that great at it. So here I'm connecting to God again, and I found that bookending my morning routine with prayer just works really well for me. This whole thing takes me probably around 45 minutes, and if I'm in a rush, I can just cut out some of the reading I do and still get it all done. Super simple and effective morning routine. It connects me to self, God, and truth, which is what I need to start my day. I have found that getting this done early in the morning before everyone in my house is up is the best way to start the day rather than just floating through the day and reacting to whatever's happening. Yes, it means I need to wake up earlier, but what I found is that I just have to go to bed earlier, so I give up some nighttime so I can gain some morning time to get my morning routine done. Then I have my daily check-ins. This habit started when I was in counseling, and then it became part of my recovery program. Basically, the goal is 3 times a day, I check in with myself and I determine what am I thinking, what am I feeling, what am I believing, and what truth do I need to connect to. It works out really well when I do this before work, in the middle of the day, and then after work. This is how I connect to myself. For most of my life, I did not do this, and I was a mess. This helps me stay connected and on the path, dealing with all the stuff going on inside me on a daily basis. When I first started doing this, it was really uncomfortable and really hard to remember. So I set reminders on my phone. I still use the reminders because I can easily slip back into those old patterns of ignoring what's going on inside me. So the reminders help. But now that I've been doing this for a few years, it's a lot easier, it's a lot more natural, and it only takes a minute or two. So each day before and after work, I try to actually check in with someone over the phone. Out of everything I do, this tends to be the craziest, but it's probably the most essential to keeping me connected. So I have a handful of guys that I can call at any time. So I'll call in the morning and in the afternoon, and I'll check in. I'll say, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I believing? And what's the truth I need to connect to? And if I don't reach him, I'll just leave it in a voicemail. It took me a lot of practice to get comfortable doing this, but over time, it gets easier and easier. Why is this so important? Well, it allows me to be known, so it helps me deal with any shame that I might be carrying around. It allows me to get all my stuff out, which helps me process my emotions, and it helps me get feedback from others, which is essential. Whatever I'm feeling, after a phone call, I always feel more sane, more peace, and like I have an idea of what I need to do. Checking in 3 times a day, 2 of which are a phone call, that's the goal, that's the ideal. Rarely do I ever hit the ideal. The goal is to stay connected and to stay consistent. It's not perfection. Okay, and then finally, my nighttime routine. My nighttime routine has had the most variation over the years, and I found that it's because what I need at the end of the day is really based on what I went through that day, what's been going on in life, and if there's any goal or step that I'm currently working on. But even with all the variation, I do try to do a couple things consistently. I keep a gratitude journal and an inventory. With an inventory, I'm trying to reflect on the day that I had, what maybe had an impact on me, and how I responded. So I'll answer questions like, did anything bother me today? Cause anger, cause shame, because these are some of the emotions that have a big impact on me. How did I handle it? How could I have handled it better? Do I have to make an amends? What lies did I believe? What truth do I need to believe? How can God help me? It's easy to just get through a day and be relieved it's over, but what an inventory does is it forces me to look at the day and actually think through the decisions I made and what I could do differently. Then finally, I keep a gratitude journal. Each day, I try to come up with 10 things that I can be grateful for. Some days it's easy, some days it's tough, but I do it because it helps me have perspective. It's easy for me to ruminate and dwell on bad and difficult days, but what I've found from keeping a gratitude journal is that even difficult days have opportunities and things that I can be grateful for. I appreciate a lot more of what I encounter throughout the day because of this practice, so it's been super helpful. So with an inventory, I'm connecting to myself and to truth and to reality. And then with the gratitude list, I'm trying to gain perspective on reality. And then I follow all this up with a short prayer. So that wraps up my daily routine and habits based on connection. Let me know in the comments what your daily routine is like. If you do any of the things I do, if you do other things, or if you have any questions or comments on some of the things I do. Hopefully this is helpful and kind of gives you some practical ideas of how you can be more connected. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.